Fallout Equestria, Project Horizons, by Somber. It's the fanfiction that everybody's talking about, giving rave reviews, and falling in love with its characters and setting. Maybe you want to join in the fun, but you don't have the time or the patience to read. 1.8 million words, spread over 77 chapters and 5 books, or listen to 200 hours of audiobooks. Fear not, my friend, for today I'm going to summarize the whole thing for you. I don't know how long this will take, but I will try to make it less than 2 hours. This summary will be divided into 2 videos. This one, which will cover the main characters, setting, and the first 2 books, chapters 1 through 33, and another one which will cover the other 3 books, chapters 33 through 77 and the epilogue. The bulk of each video will consist of me reading a summary by someone else who's better at this than I am, and then me filling in all the details that they missed. By the end of both videos you should have a pretty good idea of what happens in the story, and you can chat with your friends about it without having to read a long ass piece of shit that's literally twice the size of the Holy Bible like they did. The plot of Project Horizons is one giant clusterfuck full of alliances, where people are always changing sides, characters cheating death, scenes copied directly from anime, and an obsession with torturing its protagonist. There are over 300 named characters, including characters from other Fallout Equestria stories and the MLP canon who make cameos. In a nutshell, the story is about Blackjack, a security pony from Stable 99 who spends the story running around the city of Hoofington trying to learn about a mysterious data file she downloaded to her pip-buck called DC-1101. Which everybody wants, because it unlocks a bunch of advanced technology, basically a digital version of the platinum chip from New Vegas. And gets caught up in this vast pre-war government conspiracy, and ultimately ends up fighting a giant eldritch abomination called the Eater of Souls and stops it from destroying the world. Now at this point I have to warn you that, if you haven't read the fanfiction Fallout Equestria by KCat, then you should at least read the first few chapters of that. Otherwise you won't know what the hell I'm talking about, because Project Horizons is a fanfiction of that fanfiction. Also, if you are unfamiliar with the TV show My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic, or the video games in the Fallout franchise, then you should also take a look at those before continuing, because Fallout Equestria is a crossover of those 2 franchises. If you are unfamiliar with any of the aforementioned properties, then I suggest that you stop watching this video right now. Otherwise it will be like trying to find coordinates of a function if you only have a graph of its third derivative. If you don't know what a derivative is, then you are clearly too young or too stupid to be reading fanfiction of M-rated video games, or any fanfiction at all for that matter. And now on with the show. This first summary was written by a guy who goes by the handle Alco on a website called Project After. Now, Project After is a group of trolls who mercilessly skewer fanfiction and have a massive hate boner for Fallout Equestria and anything related to it, but it's the best summary of the first 2 books that I could find. Alcone is super snarky, but then again so is the rest of this video, and leaves out a lot of details, but just bear with me. I will cover the gaps in his summary with info from the Fallout Equestria wiki, and then any gaps in that you will just have to fill by reading the book yourself, because I don't have all day. Now then, this is how Alcone describes chapters 1 through 22. Blackjack is a security officer in Stable 99. All the vaults/stables in good Fallout/Fallout Equestria have some kind of gimmick to them, some experiment that they're based upon. 99's involved contraceptives. They had a shit ton of contraceptives on hand, for some reason. I don't particularly remember what it was, so it must not have been very important. Somewhere along the line, there was a revolt, and the women seized power, keeping the men alive as breeders and sex toys. The Sanita Sarkeesian-esque dystopia persisted for some time, as the stable's inhabitants learned to never question the established order, and to serve their benevolent ruler unflinchingly. However, things start getting wacky when the joint is invaded by a cyborg named Deus, who is basically supposed to be Pony Frank Horrigan. He and his raider chums are after some computer program called DC-1101, or something, and they'll stop at nothing to get it, and by stop at nothing, I mean that they'll frequently stop to rape everything they come into contact with, thus allowing our boneheaded protagonist to get away with the data. She's joined by P21, a breeder whose sentence of execution was commuted so that he could become Blackjack's sidekick. The two flee into the wastes together, drawing Deus and his band of merry rapists out of the stable and after them. Along the way, a bunch of stupid shit happens. There's some stuff involving enclave politicking that isn't very interesting to read about, some world building, Blackjack getting drunk and engaging in hilarity, and a plague that turns ponies into cannibals. That last thing is the most salient bit here, as the first part of the story is really about solving the mystery of the cannibal plague, while trying to figure out what EC1101 does. Eventually, they kill Deus, and that's the end of book 1, I believe. Book 2 is pretty forgettable, by which I mean I do not remember anything about it until they go back to stable 99 and discover that it's succumbed to the cannibal plague. Blackjack and her homies storm the stable, overthrow the insane Overmare, and kill Blackjack's school bully, who had Blackjack's mother's head impaled on a pike, in what I assume is an homage to Lord of the Flies and possibly Dark Forces 2, Jedi Knight, and restore peace and order to the place. Except that the stable's surviving population decided to feed the afflicted cannibals through the Soylent Green machine that produces their food, and then consume their remains, meaning that they too are afflicted with cannibalism. Whoops. Blackjack decides that, to prevent them from going on a sadistic rampage through the wasteland, she has no choice but to gas them all to death. There are, of course, several options that do not involve committing mass murder. P21 even mentions one such option, but by this point Blackjack's in a suicidal stupor, so gassing them all and dying with them is the only thought that crosses her mind. She fails to die, but the rest of her stable chokes to death on delicious chlorine, and there is where we begin our story. The arc we are looking at concerns the immediate fallout, not that kind. Nothing in this story has anything to do with fallout of this event, with Blackjack's continued attempts to end her own life, and with her sudden decision to not kill herself, and then the fallout from that decision. Poor bitch just cannot win. Alcone also provides us with descriptions of the most important characters from the first 20 chapters. It reads as follows. Blackjack, also known as Security and Queen Whiskey, our suicidal self-hating protagonist with unresolved mommy issues who plays a stringed instrument and is really not qualified to wait a minute. That's my character dossier for Shinji Ikari. Where's my Blackjack? Oh, here it is. Ahem. Our foul-mouthed, drunken, pill-popping, suicidal self-hating protagonist with unresolved mommy issues who plays a stringed instrument and is really not qualified to. She has differentum hair from Shinji. P21. In stable 99, male unicorns and earth ponies were designated with numbers, not unlike Celesto's method of assigning serial numbers to the unicorn Ecopians, and are assigned the letters U for unicorns or P for earth ponies. You get a number added every time you contribute a child to the population. When you hit 21, you're euthanized and fed to the Soylent Green machine. P21 had hit his 21st child and was on his way to be euthanized when he broke free, hit, and eventually escaped the stable with Blackjack. Blackjack, by the way, raped him once without realizing it and murdered his lover. For the first part of the story, she doesn't remember either of these things because Blackjack is exceptionally stupid. Nevertheless, those things color P21's relationship with Blackjack for most of the story, as he struggles to forgive her for everything that she did to him, while simultaneously fighting his growing friendship with and attraction toward her. P21 is also the father of Scotch Tape, a more or less major character who falls into obscurity as the story progresses. Al left out that it's heavily implied P21 is gay. Also, he refuses to carry a gun because he's afraid he'll go insane and try to kill everybody with it, but apparently the rule doesn't apply to grenade launchers. Morning Glory, the protagonist's love interest and the child of a highly influential figure within her people's hierarchy. She has unresolved issues toward her mother, who vanished on her long ago, and is generally naive about a great deal many things. She often misses the point of jokes and is a little awkward in her dealings with others. However, she is highly intelligent and inclined towards science and has a latent mean streak. Lyra, Morning Glory is Blackjack's girlfriend, lover, medic, and apologist. Glory stoops to ridiculous lows to reassure Blackjack that she hasn't done anything wrong. Nope, no siree, even when she desperately needs to be called out for all the wrong she's done. Al left out that at one point a poison joke infection makes her look exactly like Rainbow Dash. Rampage, a genetic freak whose body is covered in curious markings. She is the product of a series of horrific experiments and has been endowed with incredible and unique abilities. She is profane, prone to indulgence in drugs and alcohol, frank and open about sex, and violent. She revels in all of these things, but is also fragile and damaged beneath the surface. Early in her life, she was picked up by a crew who used her sexually before depositing her and continuing on their merry way. She also has a soft spot for kids. Rampages. She doesn't have much purpose in the story, a fact which even she seems to acknowledge. She's immortal and has vamp-like healing abilities. It's actually nanomachines, a healing talisman, meaning she can reconstitute her body, even if in the event of complete molecular disintegration. She's unflinchingly loyal to Blackjack. And she's, I don't know what she's even around for. Initially, she acts as the representative of a gang called the Reapers, who are interested in recruiting Blackjack, but that subplot ends after a while, and then she's just there for no reason, tagging along no matter what. Knights of the Old Republic 2 pulled the same shit with every one of its characters following the protagonist for no reason, but at least that game managed to fucking justify it. Rampage just exists for no reason. She really wants to die though. I say let her. Then again, she's also at least 1/8 twist, so I might just be predisposed to hate her. Rampage's most distinctive character trait is that she has a sort of multiple personality disorder going on. Now and then, different personalities will manifest through her, ranging from benign, like the repugnant abomination that is Twist, a scientist, some other boring fuckfaces nobody cares about, to the murderous and psychopathic Angel. When the Angel pops up, the only way to suppress her is to kill Rampage. Upon regenerating, she'll have reverted to normal. The Angel likes to manifest at inopportune moments, usually whenever Rampage is around a child. This usually results in the death of the child, which actually happens at least once during the story. Blackjack and the others have no real objection to Rampage following them around after this, because that's who I want looking over my shoulder, a nightmarishly powerful abomination of science who occasionally manifests as a murderer of children. Lekuni, the representative of a formerly vilified race who acts as both the conduit between the protagonist and the gestalt consciousness of said race, and as a means of developing that race beyond the role of faceless bad guys. This representative works with the protagonist as part of a hesitant alliance between them and the Gestalt race. It's a give and take relationship where they work with one another to their mutual gain. However, the representative is also highly curious about certain aspects of society and winds up developing a distinct personality as well as pledging loyalty to the protagonist, which nearly overrides whatever pre-existing loyalties it may have. Hey guys, I think Somba might like Mass Effect. Lokuni is the token alicorn in the story, acting as an extension of the Trixie goddess's will. Apparently, the Trixie goddess doesn't want to deal with all the accumulated angst and sorrows of her alicorn subjects, so she just transfers them all to Lokuni and makes her go far away so that she doesn't have bitching and moaning cluttering up her collective consciousness. Despite being literally the physical embodiment of angst, Lokuni is surprisingly tolerable. She doesn't say or do much, and she very seldom turns into a big giant crybaby, unlike every other character in the story. I also don't have any idea how her name is pronounced. Scotch tape. Despite my choice of picture, Scotchy Watchy tape is surprisingly not that annoying. Well, at first. As the story goes on, Scotchy Watchy turns into a whiny, wangsty fuck, just like all the other characters, but for the first few chapters she's in, she's pretty tolerable. As an outsider to the gang's stupidity, she provides a certain comedic edge by acting utterly blasé and nonchalant toward all the insanity going on around her. This sadly goes away as she develops into a neurotic whiner, just like the rest of the cast. But it's fun while it lasts. Scotch is also P21's daughter. That isn't really important for now, though. Or at all. that covers Al's description of Blackjack and her companions. There's this unwritten rule that you need to be super angsty and have issues, and you have to hurt Blackjack in some way in order to join her gang, which might be a pun based on the phrase "hit me" from Blackjack the card game, or a running gag based on that scene in the original Fallout Equestria where Calamity shoots Little Pip. Also, Blackjack's real name used to be Go Fish before she changed it to Blackjack, because Go Fish is a stupid name. Everyone in her family is named after a card game, going all the way back to her ancestor Taro, who was Twilight Sparkle and Big Macintosh's love child, which totally becomes relevant later on. And now for Al's description of the villains. Deus, real name Doofus. Pony Frank Horrigan was the villain for the first part of the story, but he dies horribly and is promptly forgotten about, except he isn't, because the story likes to remind us that he existed, so that we can reflect upon a time when there was an actual villain, and not merely a collection of off-screen suit-wearing baddies tenting their fingers and muttering excellent, while Blackjack jumps through hoops. Memories. Deus is revealed to have been a member of Big Macintosh's squad back in the day, who was disgraced after aping Twist. If it were any other character, I'd probably be at least mildly shocked and disgusted, but since it's Twist, I'm pushed to a state of silent apathy. Sanguine. The conniving bad guy who orchestrated Deus's invasion of the stable. He wants EC-1101 because of reasons. He's a ghoul, exudes pink death gas, and really just wants to get his family back, so that they can be together again. Spoiler alert, he does, and they promptly die. It's hysterically funny. Psycho Shy.
Hey Twilight, what's soaking wet and clueless?
Fluttershy, I've had just about enough.
Your face!
That joke stretched across about 30 chapters. She's Fluttershy's daughter, who was put into stasis before the bombs dropped, and was awoken by Sanguine, so that she could get him access to EC-1101, because why not? She wants to have sex with Sanguine really bad for some unfathomable reason. Basically, she's the Harley Quinn to Sanguine's Joker. Goldenblood. Somber's attempt at a serious sympathetic villain. Goldenblood orchestrated every single event that happened in both Project Horizons and Vanilla Fallout Equestria. Luckily, Candy Cat hasn't read Project Horizons. His mark is upon literally every single pre-war thing in both stories. He did it all as part of some grand master plan which, even 50 chapters on, is still really unclear. It's alleged that he survived the apocalypse and is still alive in some form pulling the strings. He also got to fuck Fluttershy, causing his already implausibly high Gary Stewness to skyrocket. They were married for a while and were going to have a daughter, Psycho Shy, but Fluttershy miscarried when Goldie called out Luna's name during sex. I couldn't make this up if I tried. Goldenblood has his paw prints all over an implausible number of things in both stories, making him on top of literally every single thing that ever happened. He's frail, sickly, conniving, and shit's pathos. He is the Gary Stew to end all Gary Stews. The Dealer. A ghostly hallucination of Blackjack's who appears from time to time as the manifestation of her insanity. He shows up to give her advice, to comment on current events, or simply to make fun of her for failing at life. He does make a half-hearted effort to talk her out of killing herself, but he mostly just amuses himself by talking circles around her. He's a cool concept, at least, until Somber gives him a wangsty backstory for no reason, except that we aren't allowed to have nice things. And this is where Alcone's description ends. After that, Al and the rest of the project, after trolls continue to mock the story, but the conversation gets really bizarre when Somber himself comes in and tries to defend his story. It's really weird. If you want to see it for yourself, I'll include a link to the forum in the video description, if I remember to do it. If it's not there, just do a Google search for Project after Project Horizons, and it should be the first result. For the rest of the video, I will be talking about the Hoofington area and its major factions, with information taken off the Fallout Equestria wiki, then ending with some events described in a timeline created by Reddit user Yamamoto114. Hoofington is arguably the most dangerous city in the entire post-apocalyptic world. In addition to the regular balefire radiation, there's this special kind of radiation in the downtown core called the Innovation. that's so powerful that even the goddesses alicorns, the Fallout Equestria XPs of super mutants, can't even tolerate it, with the sole exception of Lacuni. The raiders are also more dangerous because they are infected with a virus called raider disease, which turns ponies into cannibals except for Pegasi, who are somehow immune. 30 years ago, a group of 6 ponies came and tried to make Hoofington a better place. Like all good bands, they eventually broke up, but most of them went on to set up the area's major factions. Finders Keepers created the Finders, a group of scavengers who stimulate trade and try to stay out of politics. They are now run by her daughters, Caprice, Bottlecap, and Usury. Silverstripe, known as Dr. Zodiac, founded the Collegiate, a group of scientists who run a hospital, but also have a branch of deadly assassins. Big Daddy Reaper formed the Reapers, a group of raider pros who hang out in an old football stadium. They have this scoreboard that keeps the local raiders at bay by getting them to fight against each other in a never-ending game of who can be the best raider instead of attacking innocent people. King Awesome turned a gang of slavers into the Society, a group of hobbity-tobbity aristocrats who live in an old country club. They are some of the only people in the wasteland who sell fresh, unprocessed food that isn't meat, but they use slave labor to grow it. Crunchy Carrots founded a local chapter of the Steel Rangers on the docked battleship HMS Celestia. They are supposedly trying to keep bad guys from acquiring technology, but then one of its members, Star Paladin Steel Rain, attempts a coup. The 6th pony, Dawn, doesn't help anybody at all and instead ditches her former friends and joins the Enclave for a while. Then she ditches the Enclave and goes off to work for the bad guys. She's also mourning Glory's mother. There's also a couple of other groups, like the Zebra Remnants, who are still fighting the Great War 200 years after it ended. Some survivalists called the Highlanders, some of Red Eye's army, the Thunderhead Enclave, who made themselves rich by abandoning the Enclave's stupid isolationist policies and trading with the wasteland, much to the ire of Navarro, the Crusaders, a group of orphans who don't really do anything, and a church called Chapel, which is run by a pedophile named Priest who gives Blackjack a free house and tries with little success to convince random ponies not to commit suicide. Then they are all joined by an army called the Harbingers that pops up out of nowhere for the sole purpose of stealing Blackjack's pip buck. Their slogan is the fire I mean Hoofington rises, and their leader is a pony called the Prophet, who we later find out is Glory's mother Dawn, who is working for an evil computer named Cognitum, who is basically a cross between Mr. House from Fallout New Vegas and John Henry Eden from Fallout 3. It was Cognitum who hired Sanguine to bring EC-1101 to her in exchange for letting him do whatever he wanted with something called Project Chimera. Cognitum can afford to hire a private army because she spent the past 200 years Bitcoin mining. However, we don't find out any of this until much later. Al's summary left us off at chapter 23. According to Yamamoto, in chapters 23 and 24, Blackjack goes off to Watcher's cave to meet Watcher in person, and they talk for a bit. This is shortly after Little Pip met Watcher in the original Fallout Equestria, which he mentions. Blackjack goes back to Hoofington, does some stuff, then goes to the HMS Celestia and tricks Steel Rain into publicly revealing his secret plan to betray the Elder. There's a fight, and Blackjack uses a powerful magic gun called Trottenhemus Folly. It sinks the ship, ending the Steel Rangers Hoofington chapter. Then Blackjack and her friends go on a ship called the Seahorse. Then the Seahorse gets attacked by pirates who rape and mutilate Blackjack. She reconciles with P-21. Then she dies. Seriously, she fucking dies. It even says, "Game over," in the chapter footnote. But of course, the story doesn't end there. There's still 44 more chapters to go, but I stopped at 33 because that's the end of book 2. It's also where a lot of readers say that Somber jumped the shark. Well, this is it. Let me give you one piece of advice. Be honest, because I know more than you can imagine. As you have guessed, this is the end of the first half of my Fallout Equestria Project Horizons plot summary. I imagine that right now you're feeling a bit like Alice, tumbling down the rabbit hole. I can see it in your eyes. You have the look of a viewer who accepts what he sees because he is expecting the video to end. Ironically, this is not far from the truth. If you don't like the feeling of cliffhangers, I know exactly what you mean. Let me remind you why you're still here. You're here because you want to know something. What you want to know is like a splinter in your mind, driving you mad. It is this feeling that has brought you here today. Do you know what I'm talking about? Do you want to know what happens next? The plot goes everywhere, all around us. It pulls itself out from over your eyes and reveals the true depths of the Project Horizons conspiracy. But unfortunately I cannot tell you the rest of the plot. You have to read it for yourself. Or you can just hear my summary of it in the next video. You take the blue pill, you wake up on YouTube, the story ends, and you can believe whatever you want to believe about what happens to Blackjack and her friends. Or maybe you're just tired of my shitty video butchering this story's plot and want to watch something else. You take the red pill, you stay in Hoofington, and I show you just how insane this story gets, and you will be scarred for life. Remember, all I'm offering is the truth. Have you taken it? Follow me.